Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm excited to share some new features that we've developed, actually inspired by feedback directly from you all. So we had several members tell us that, we like your products, we like what you've done. You're telling us information that is useful, but what do we do with it? You're telling us our funds are unhealthy, but we really need your help in making decisions for the future. And so we've listened to this feedback and we think it's bang on. So we spent a lot of time prioritizing this and developing some features for you all. You'll automatically get access to these features if you've already paid for a report. So don't worry about that. You'll notice when you pull up your report, it'll automatically have two new sections. And these sections are called alternatives and explore funds. So I'm going to walk you through exactly how to use these sections and how to get the most out of them in today's session. So with that, let's jump in here. So I'm pulling up a random sample report here, John Doe's report, and I'm going to show you how to use these new features. So the basic concepts behind this are helping you to evaluate funds to find new options for yourself. So I'm going to start by walking you through the Explore Funds tab. The Explore Funds tab allows you to compare funds across categories. Across any category of fund, you will get a ranking of the funds based on any parameter you choose. So let's take an example here. So let's say that I wanted to look for a large cap fund. So I'm going to click on equity. I'm going to click on market cap and large cap. So this is going to give me a listing of every large cap fund that's in Bharosa's database, which will be essentially any large cap fund in India. And I have a lot of helpful data that's going to enable me to compare these funds and decide which fund I want to invest in. So the first selection I have is up here, which allows me to zero in on the category I want. And then the second selection I have is what data I'm interested in. So the first tab that opens up is a general tab. It allows you to see the Barosa issues for that fund, like we show you for your nitty-gritty funds. It allows you to see the AUM of the fund, so how much in assets the fund manages. And you're able to see the expense ratio of the fund, so how much it charges you to manage your money, and the 5-year performance and a Barosa score. Now, the Barosa score is an algorithm that we've developed that varies from category to category based on what's important in analyzing the categories in question. But some of the things we look at are concentration of the fund. Less concentration is better. Performance of the fund, both 5-year, 3-year, and 1-year performance. So we have a cross section of performance. Fee of the fund, how expensive is it? And we measure those things all relative to what category it's in. And for debt funds, we look at things like the ratings mix, the maturity mix. So we get a very holistic sense of the fund. And we use those to give you a quantitative rating for the fund. So this is a very helpful input for you to get a second opinion on how good or bad we think a fund is. A Bharosa score is measured out of 5. So the closer to 5, the better we think the fund is. And so that'll give you our view on terms of what the numbers say about the fund. And it's just one input in your decision making. Don't obviously trust everything to the Barosa score. It's just one helpful double check that you can use in your analysis. So let's actually use this to see what we can do in the large cap category. Let's use it to play around. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I want to look at funds with the highest Barosa score. So I can see now that the highest is the Mire Asset Large Cap Fund, but it's not too different than the Nippon India Large Cap Fund and the Kotak Blue Chip Fund. So I can decide, hey, I want to look at performance more closely to see how these funds compare. So I can click performance, and this is going to show me in detail how the funds have compared. So I can see that, actually, it seems like Nippon India Large Cap Fund has done better in the last 1 year than Mire. So maybe even though the Barosa score is higher for Mire, maybe I think that the last 1 year is more important than Barosa thinks, right? So I may choose to disagree with Barosa at any point. But maybe I want to look in more detail. Maybe I want to see what sectors they're invested in. So by clicking the sector information, I can see exactly what sectors they're invested in. So I can see, oh, wow, they're actually all invested in the same top 3 sectors. When if I hover over, I can actually see what the composition is. And they all seem to have pretty similar composition in finance, tech, energy. So, okay, maybe it's not so critical to look at sector, but I can look at issuers. What's the biggest company in each of them? Infosys is in Mire, HDFC, Reliance, and I can use this to help me pick what large cap fund I want to invest in. So now, what if I wanted to compare a large cap fund to a mid cap fund, right? So what we have the ability for you to do is create a custom dashboard of funds that you can compare across different categories. And so you can access that by clicking on this dropdown, where you get access to something called the custom dropdown, the custom table, which allows you to add any funds across any category. So I could, for example, add a large cap fund, then move to a mid cap fund, add that, and then I can go to my custom page and I can see those 2 funds and how they compare across all those same metrics. So this is a really helpful way for you to help you make decisions about what funds you want to own and basically how to evaluate them, right? So that is kind of a quick overview of this. One other thing I'll cover is what the color shading means, right? So you'll notice there are all these green and red shading things all over the place, right? So essentially what the shading tells you for most things is if something is better than or worse than average. So for example, Axis Blue Chip has 1 issue, right? ICICI Pru Blue Chip has 3 issues. So in the large cap category, if I zoom down, I can see that the average fund has 2.1 issues. So if something is below 2.1 issues, right, it's going to be green. If it's above, it's going to be red. So it gives you a quick way to see if something's below average or above average. For performance, what green tells you is it's beaten its benchmark, and what red tells you is it's underperformed its benchmark. So performance is the one thing where instead of showing you the average, it's showing you how it compares to the actual benchmark of the fund. And you can see that sometimes it'll be white. That's where we don't have a benchmark for that fund, or we don't have a data point for the fund. So that's the color shading, and the color shading can be a very useful way for you to get a very quick snapshot of if something's doing well or if something's doing badly. So that's in a nutshell how to get the most out of the Explore tool. Now let's talk about alternatives. So one of the things that we got from you guys is, I want to learn how to switch out of funds where you're telling me I have a lot of issues, right? So for example, let's say this is someone's report. They sort it by issues. Here are the funds with most of the issues. They can decide to explore if, what Barosa's suggested alternatives are for each of these funds. And the way to do that is to click this plus sign over here to add it to something called your review list. So if there are funds that you want to explore switching out of, you can click this button. So like, let's take Aditya Birla SL focused equity fund, for example. There are 4 issues for this fund. Let's say that I want to look at exiting this fund. I'll click it. It's going to take me to, it's going to add it to my review list. Now I can click the alternatives tab. Suddenly I see that Aditya Birla SL focused fund is here. I can click it and I get the Bharosa recommendations for alternatives to this. Our alternatives are broken down into 2 categories. One is index and the other is active. Again, index is going to look to meet the benchmark. Active is going to look to beat the benchmark. And the way we suggest the active fund is we look for the highest Barosa rating in the category of that fund. So here we're suggesting the SPI focused equity fund as a fund that the person may want to look into. So let's say that this is a fund you want to look into as a replacement. You can choose to add it to your custom Explore list by clicking this button here on the right-hand side. So I can click it here. And when I do that, if I go back to Explore funds and I go back to my custom page, now suddenly I also have this SPI focused equity fund in my custom list. And now I can truly get a better understanding of why did Barosa say that this is a good fund to consider? And I can look at it across a variety of metrics and against other funds that I have shortlisted on my own. So using these tools, we hope it'll help you guys find good answers for alternatives for your problem funds. And using this, hopefully you'll be able to improve your portfolio performance going forward. So we look forward to hearing your feedback after using this tool, and for more suggestions. Like I said, this was motivated by you guys, and we continue to develop based on inputs that we get from you guys. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions from the users. So Anita, you want to ask the Q&A?
The first question that has come in is there any plan to help us decide between categories? Because most of our investments have been done without much understanding and thought. And if one wants to reinvest the money, it can go into a different category. Because just now you are saying that it'll go into the same category.
Yes, so we will be working on tools that help you at a higher level. So that's a great question. So the question for everyone's benefit, just said a little simply, is that, okay, great, you've told me, you know, how funds compare in a particular category, but how do I decide what category I want to be in? That's a very good suggestion. I think we're going to have, I think it's well worth our time to create tools that help people, for example, understand how have mid-cap funds performed versus large cap funds? How have small cap funds performed versus large cap funds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is something that we can definitely do. Like we have an Explore Funds tab, maybe we'll introduce an Explore Categories tab in the future.
The next question that has come in is, also, can you give us an overview of, give us the tools to compare mutual fund houses or AMCs?
That's another great question. So that's something that we can do quite easily, and could also be a neat way for people to get high-level views on how to narrow down the list. So for example, if we told you which fund houses have the lowest cost funds, or which fund houses have the best performing debt funds or best performing equity funds, it'll help you narrow down the decision-making process in your mind. So anything that helps users is something that I'm interested in building. So I think that's another thing that we'll add to our development queue.
There aren't any more questions for now. So I think we can end the call, end the recording at least.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to hearing more of your thoughts in the future, and happy investing. Bye.